In this week's episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diamond is unbreakable. Josuke and Koichi do battle with an evil puppet master by the name of Toshikazu Hazamada. The mold has officially been broken in this week's episode as we are finally introduced to a stand which can be seen by normal people. Not to mention it's a stand which is incredibly disturbing and powerful. You see, this week's episode opens up with a very freaky scene of this dude hanging out at his computer, listening to the radio and all that jazz, when he suddenly takes a mechanical pencil and gouges his own eye out. Yeah, that's a pretty ridiculous way to open up an episode of JoJo, but honestly, this is JoJo we're talking about. You can't go 2 minutes without seeing a ridiculous, over-the-top, super violent scene. And that's in this week's episode when we're finally introduced to the character of Toshikazu Hazamada, who is another student at Josuke's school who has this stand power. His stand goes by the name of Surface. For some odd reason, they decide to call it Show Off, even though there's clearly a scene where they actually have a little bubble come up and it says the name of the stand and it clearly says Surface. I'm sure this was done for some sort of legal reason, but it's really annoying when you can hear him say Surface and they even have something on the screen that actually says that. It's a little conflicting and strange, although I have to admit, calling it Show Off does make sense, and it is actually a really nice pun, because his stand has this power where it can actually mimic someone, and essentially, it's one of those like dolls you find at like an art store, one of those like little wooden dolls that you can pose in different ways and paint and do all types of cool stuff, except that when it actually looks at someone, it transforms them to directly, and it can actually mimic their movements, talk just like them, and basically it's a perfect copy, and if the other original person is in the vicinity, they can actually be manipulated by Surface. So if Surface moves its arm like this, the other person is also going to move their arm in the same exact way. So this also explains how this guy at the beginning of the episode was killed. This stand transformed into this guy, took a pen and jabbed it right into its eye, which caused the other guy to do that. And surprisingly, he's still alive, even after jamming that thing right into his damn eyeball socket. So this is a really big problem. This stand is transformed into Josuke, and it's causing all sorts of trouble. Hell, the minute it transforms into Josuke, it actually moves its arm and uses it to attack Koichi. And Koichi gets the crap knocked out of him in this episode, where his entire, throat just gets crushed, and he gets slammed through this door, glass all over the place. But luckily, at the very last second, Josuke was able to use Crazy Diamond to heal him. And this gave Koichi an opportunity to also use his stand powers, which at the moment are not going to be super useful in this battle, but they are going to help them later on in the episode, because Toshikazu is actually trying to find Jotaro Kujo. Why? Apparently he's going to be detrimental to his plans in the future. What those plans are not really divulged too much in this episode. So he's going to try and meet up with him and make him think that this Josuke is actually the real one so that he can attack him. Although, to be perfectly honest with you guys, as cool as this stand is and as useful as the powers are, I really think Jotaro would have just wailed on this guy. I felt that he would have just completely destroyed him. His time-skipping abilities would be really useful. Maybe if he transformed into him, he could prevent that from happening. But still, Jotaro's just way more skilled and could probably take this guy out. And I have a feeling that this Toshikazu guy is probably going to end up being another ally, very similar to Tamami Kobayashi, who in this week's episode was just as funny as he usually is. He even gets the crap knocked out of him in this episode, actually. That one Josuke, the fake one, actually attacks him by just smacking him right in the head with a brick, just completely decking him. It looks really violent, too. But he's a real goofy side character, so he's just going to be fine. The other reason I think that this Toshikazu guy is going to end up being an ally is because he is featured heavily in the intro of the show and the ending in a very non-threatening manner. Not to mention, he was defeated in this episode, but he wasn't killed, and he wasn't even defeated by frickin' Josuke or Koichi or even Jotaro. There was this scene when they're actually trying to find Jotaro, and they run into these two guys who are hanging out on their motorcycles, and he actually ends up hitting them and getting some blood on them accidentally. So these guys get super freaking pissed off. I also really loved the scene where Josuke actually tricked the Surface stand by throwing a piece of glass at him and then using his stand's powers to reverse it so that his hand actually got caught in a bottle and actually ended up cutting it off. Something else that's really strange, and maybe they'll explain this, I really thought that, when you attacked a stand, it sort of had, that voodoo effect, where, if you cut their hand off, their hand is going to get cut off. If you punch them in the face, they're going to feel the pain in their face. that stand gets completely annihilated in this episode, and we really don't get to see, like, that it would actually kill Toshikazu. In the end of the episode, he's going to the hospital, and it also looks like he's being watched by that other mysterious electrical stand, the Red Hot Chili Pepper, who seemed like he had plans. Maybe he was the one who was sort of manipulating these events, being the puppet master to the puppet master. I think that would be pretty interesting. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode of Diamond is Unbreakable? Another episode that introduces another really cool character. A character who definitely has a big chip on his shoulder, and that's because he's not noticed enough. No one even knows who this guy is. When he's walking around with his stand, which takes the form of Josuke, all of these girls are just swarming him, but only because he's walking around Josuke. And it's funny how that really gets under his skin, and how he talks back to his stand as if it actually is Josuke, to which his stand really doesn't care whatsoever. And then there's, of course, the biggest twist of the episode, which is actually how the episode ended, where it almost seemed like Josuke was about to be used to kill Jotaro at the end, when suddenly those two bikers show up again and end up beating the ever-living shit out of Toshikazu, which I thought was a really nice twist, too, because you rarely see those type of characters return, but because Josuke actually healed them, they had the ability to get their revenge, which was very bitter and very awesome. I really damn loved it. I liked this whole episode. It wasn't my favorite episode from Diamond is Unbreakable, probably my least favorite so far, but I love the fact that they're going really crazy with the stand powers in this one, and they're not just a bunch of people who can just punch things. They all have really interesting abilities. Not to mention, when he actually found the stand in this episode, how creepy it was when he found this big wooden doll in this guy's locker, which suddenly transformed into Josuke. It was really shocking, and I really couldn't understand the power at first, and until I realized that it was this dude who essentially turns into a puppet master with a little bit of voodoo power mixed in there as well. You move the arm, Josuke's arm moves too. It was a really interesting concept. And I like that Koichi is continuing to be very useful with his powers, being able to track this guy and how they're able to stop him from going over the train tracks by actually using his powers to create train noises, which I thought was really damn clever. Gave them the opportunity to meet with Jotaro, who, like I said before, this dude would have just completely gotten destroyed by Jotaro. I would have loved to see that version of the fight. That being said, great episode right here. New characters being introduced, lots of great action, lots of great comedy, lots of ridiculous over-the-top JoJo violence. Just another great episode right here. So I'm going to give this one right here a 4 out of 5. Not my favorite one. I think the character of Toshikazu is interesting, but I can't wait to see what he's going to bring to the table in the future. That being said, the series is doing a great job of introducing us to a lot of characters and keeping the mysterious Red Hot Chili Pepper story alive. I can't wait to see how that's actually going to manifest in the next couple episodes. Not to mention, they do introduce this one female character in this episode who seems pretty smitten with Josuke, but that's pretty much all we know about her. We're going to have to see what her deal is probably in the next couple of episodes. So, great episode of JoJo. Check it out, JoJo fans. You'll definitely see something you like. But if any of you did watch this week's episode, why don't you tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below? Did you have a favorite scene from this episode? What did you think of the character of Toshikazu Hazamada and his stand surface? What would you do with his stand powers? And what do you want to see from the rest of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Diamond is Unbreakable anime series? Please tell me in the comments section below. You guys are so freaking kick-ass. Thank you for watching this review. I really appreciate it. If you would like to help support the channel, maybe smash that like button. Maybe share this video with some friends. Maybe you could subscribe to the channel. That way you'll see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. Not to mention our weekly podcast show, and you should check out all of our cool links in the description box below as well. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.